Was Britain truly drowning in ale? Did Parisian cabarets whisper secrets of scandalous liaisons? Let's dive into a world where drinking wasn't just a pleasure, it was a battlefield, a stage for social control, sexual intrigue, and a whole lot of questionable decisions. Imagine a medieval England practically bubbling with beer, not the fancy stuff, mind you. We're talking alehouses crammed with farmers, blacksmiths, and the occasional surprisingly well-dressed merchant. 1 out of every 142 people, according to a surprisingly detailed 1577 survey, had access to one. Seriously, that's a lot of spilled pints, and it wasn't just about quenching thirst, it was about belonging. Church ales like the one in Kingston St. Michael were practically religious ceremonies, a chance to unite the community, settle disputes, and let's be honest, get gloriously drunk. But then, a shift. Puritans, those sticklers for virtue, started to frown upon all this merriment. A piety that was enduring, serious, and austere, they declared, effectively shutting down the party. Cue a surge in tavern visits, a desperate attempt to recapture lost camaraderie. Now, picture Paris. Forget the cozy English alehouse. The cabaret was a different beast entirely. Tables and chairs, gone. Instead, you'd find yourself crammed into a smoky room, sharing a bottle of wine with a motley crew, young men, artists, writers, and the occasional shady character. These weren't places for polite conversation. They were hotbeds of gossip, rumors, and let's not beat around the bush, illicit encounters. A lawyer named Claude de Rubies, observing this trend, chillingly noted, "It is sometimes expedient to allow the people to play the fool and make merry, lest by holding them in with too great a rigor we put them in despair. These gay sports abolished, the people go instead to taverns, drink up and begin to cackle, their feet dancing under the table to decipher king, princes, the state, and justice, and draft scandalous defamatory leaflets." Basically, when the respectable world closed down the festivals, the people went to the taverns to make their own fun, and their fun often involved spreading gossip and dissent. Let's talk women. Were they welcome in these lively establishments? Not exactly. In Lille, France, a decree slammed the door shut. Women were banned from taverns altogether. Why? Because apparently a woman's place wasn't in a smoky room, arguing politics and drinking wine. In England, the situation was slightly less restrictive, but still overwhelmingly male. A mere 7% of tavern patrons were female. It wasn't just about the drinking, it was about control. Men had carved out their own spaces, their own rituals, and women weren't part of the equation, but the taverns weren't just about socializing. They were a breeding ground for, well, let's just say complicated relationships. Remember that wedding tale in Chaucer's Canterbury Tales? Old January, fueled by spiced wine, desperately pursued young May. And then there's the story of Martin Guerra, kidnapped and held hostage at a tavern until he could fulfill his marital duties. It wasn't just about the groom being drunk, it was about the pressure of fulfilling obligations. The French had a fascinating custom called a revelry, a ritual designed to enforce social norms, and it often involved kidnapping brides and holding them at taverns until they performed their duties. Think of it as a very public, very forceful way of ensuring a marriage happened, and the money, it always went towards drinks. If a groom couldn't consummate the marriage, he was essentially worth as much as a drunk warrior, a liability. The money wasn't just for the bride, it was for the whole community, a sort of compensation for the disruption of social order. One particularly gruesome example from Transloy involved a servant who refused to pay enough for drinks and ended up dead. A pistol shot. Seriously, but the most unsettling aspect, the idea that drinking led to sex. It was a pervasive belief reinforced by scripture, medical advice, and of course, popular literature. Samuel Ward, a preacher, chillingly observed that the chiefest pastime of a drunkard is to heat and overcome others with wine that he may discover their nakedness and glory in their foil and folly. It wasn't just about getting drunk, it was about a perceived license to exploit and dominate. Let's consider the role of the devil. Medieval writers weren't shy about associating taverns with the underworld. They called them the Devil's Church, a place where sinful deeds were plotted and carried out. The image was potent, a dark, smoky space where men, fueled by alcohol, abandoned their morals and indulged in vice. It's a dramatic picture, but it reflects a genuine anxiety about the potential for drink to corrupt and destroy. So what's the takeaway? Drinking wasn't just a social activity in medieval and early modern Europe. It was a microcosm of society itself. It was a place for forging friendships, settling disputes, and, let's be honest, getting wildly drunk. But it was also a place where social norms were enforced, where sexual expectations were tested, and where the line between pleasure and peril was dangerously blurred. It was a world where a few pints could lead to a whole lot of trouble, and where the devil himself seemed to be holding court. Was the image of the tavern truly a devil's church, or simply a reflection of a society grappling with the complexities of pleasure, morality, and social control? Did the pursuit of camaraderie and the simple joy of a shared drink ultimately outweigh the darker consequences of excess?